Welcome back, everybody. Bobby Betts Fights back at it again for some UFC action. UFC 273, Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie. We are back after a 2-week layoff, and I can say I'm excited to be back. You know, after that week of no fights, it was nice to get a nice break. Enjoy some of the simpler things in life. Some fresh air. Some good food. Maybe even saw the family a little bit, but there really is a piece of your heart missing when you don't get some fights on Saturday. There's just something about, not being able to tune in, after a nice dinner, grab a couple of cans, a couple of cold ones, sit back and watch some entertainment, And I'm really glad that piece of me is going to be back this week because we got UFC 273, like I said, Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie. We also got Aljamain Sterling on the card fighting Peter Yan in their second matchup. And then we got Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns, which is going to be an absolute showdown at welterweight. So we got a ton of good fights on this card. I'm excited to get back in the green. We went 8 straight weeks hot, and then last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, in Columbus, we came up a little bit short. Still up 19 units on the year. Not going to phase us. We're going to get right back on track. 2 weeks to look at this card, examining fights, looking at the lines, looking at the props, picking out the best parlays, the best props, best straight plays. And we got a very, very thick slate of bets for this card. And I am pumped. So a little bit different this week. We're going to break it down between the prelims, the early prelims, the prelims, and the main card. So you're going to be 3 videos. This one being the first, going to be the early prelims. And we're going to break it down. Nice short videos, nice concise analysis. Get you to the point, what I'm liking, who I'm not liking, and what I'm betting. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it with the first fight of the night. Julio Arce facing off against Daniel Willie Cat Santos to kick us off. In this fight, you look at Daniel Santos making his UFC debut. If you go back and look at the tape on Daniel Santos, he's a guy that loves to spin. He's, very quick twitch, electric. You're going to have a lot of spinning attacks coming at you. I believe he's gotten 2 TKOs by spinning back kick to the body. Like, this dude's a liver hunter. Like, he's going to find that. But the thing you notice in his videos, he gets dropped a lot. There was a couple of times, I think 2 fights that I watched where he's just, he's raw. He's that guy that is up and coming. He belongs in the UFC, but it's going to take a little feeling out process. He could get the highlight reel KOs by all means, but, I'd say a little untested on the ground, not too much there. Striking definitely wants to keep it standing, and he will keep it standing no matter who he's fighting at this point in his career. But what worries me is he gets touched up a lot. And granted, he has been able to recover, been able to wrestle out of it, and been able to come back and get the win. But against a guy like Julio Arce was just knocking on the doorstep of the top 15 in the division, okay? That fight against Song Yadong, it was too much too soon for Julio Arce, but people were talking about him in the top 15 if he was able to get past Song Yadong. Look where Song Yadong is. He's knocking on the door of a title shot. He's probably about a fight or 2 away after starching Marlon Moraes in the first round. So we know Song Yadong is what he's capable of. So Julio Arce losing to Song Yadong isn't that's not going to set him back too much. Okay, honestly. I like Julio Arce. I like going back, you look at the fights against, Andre Ewell. Awesome performance. Calm, cool, and collective. Showed off crisp boxing. Ended up putting him away. And then you look, Julian Erosa, a lot of fights that he has are very, very competitive fights. Rarely do you see Julio Arce, it look like he doesn't belong. He definitely belongs. He's definitely game. And, if he strung together a few wins, he could definitely be in the top 15. So I think it's going to be a tough matchup for Daniel Santos, who is pretty reliant on that KO and that knockout power that he has in both his hands and his feet in order to get the job done. Like, could he catch Julio Arce, with the spinning back kick to the body and really hurt him? He's done it twice before. He's found the liver on 2 guys, and they just kind of shut down when you get hit with that liver shot. You just hit the ground. But I think Arce's boxing is just too crisp. He's in and out. He gets his reads. He doesn't force the issue. And for a guy like Daniel Santos who gets hit often, I think Arce is going to be able to find the holes and be able to pick them apart before Daniel Santos finds any type of rhythm. and can get anything going with any of those spinning attacks or any of those wild shots, those explosions that he has. I mean, Arce's seen that all before. You know, he's calm, cool, and collective. He's the vet in this case. I got Julio Arce in this fight. I mean, if you're looking at the line, you're going to get Arce right around minus 200. If you do like Daniel Santos, which, you know, to be honest, a lot of people do, from what I'm seeing online, you're going to get him right around plus 165, 170. But I think it's really tilting in Arce's way, and I don't see him losing that fight. So I got Julio Arce in that one. Moving on to our next fight, which is Piera Rodriguez versus Kay Hansen. Now, this fight, an interesting one, because Piera Rodriguez started off as a plus 130 dog and is now a minus 115, pushing minus 120 favorite. So a lot of money coming in on Piera Rodriguez in this fight. Kay Hansen opened at minus 115, minus 120. She's now plus 105. At one point, she was all the way up to plus 118 as an underdog. So it kind of peeled that back a little bit. But in this one, what you're looking at is you got to break it down to the matchup, because you got Piera Rodriguez, who is, she's going to look to slug it out. She's going to want to keep it on the feet. If you look at her Contender Series fight, opposite of what I'm saying right now, honestly, she fought a very good kickboxer, but that person she was fighting was lacking in the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu and any type of grappling. It was very lacking. So Rodriguez took, you know, rightfully so, the easy path to victory. You know, got her takedowns in, got her on the mat, got her ride time, landed some ground and pound. And then on the feet, you know, she did get touched up a little bit. But normally Piera Rodriguez is the one that's doing the touching. If you go back and take a look at her fights, you know, fighting in LFA, she's fought some good competition for the regional scene, and in all of her fights, she's winging these hooks and throwing together these combinations, and, you know, very quick, you know, very, like, explosive. But again, kind of like Daniel Santos, like, it seems like, you know, the striking's a little bit raw, but she can overwhelm you with volume, and she's not afraid to stand in the pocket and trade, and she's got a chin on her. So with Kay Hansen, who in this fight should be looking to wrestle heavily, she's got to rely on what she's good at, which is getting in on the hips, getting it down to the ground, and just taking advantage on the ground with her grappling. You know, the 3-on-in for her, I mean, she started off, she submitted Jin Frey, who doesn't have the greatest ground game, I'll be honest with you. Lost a close decision to McKenna. Some say Kay Hansen won that fight. I would say McKenna won that fight. And then she stepped up to featherweight and faced Jasmine Jasudavicius, and she wasn't able to get her down on the ground, stayed up standing, and to be honest, Kay Hansen in the third round didn't look too bad on the feet. You know, she was popping the shots, throwing out some volume. She ended up losing that fight, but it's really tough to throw that into the equation when she's fighting a girl, Piera Rodriguez, who's not 5'7", who's similar height, similar stature, similar reach to Kay Hansen, and it's back down at strawweight at 115. So in my mind, I'm throwing out the Jasmine Jasudavicius fight because it's extremely difficult. You know, it's a different type of takedown that you got to have to get a girl who not only has to cut down to 125, you probably don't have to cut, you know, Kay Hansen's not cutting down that much to 125. Jasudavicius is just tall, so it's tough to take someone down because you got to get the leverage, but, you know, their feet are still dangling. It's tough, you know. It's different. She should have more success at strawweight, and her game plan should be to shoot early and often, because Piera Rodriguez, if there's one thing in the tape, you go back and look at it, she is more than willing to accept the position on the ground and give herself some time, get a breather before she gets back up. If Kay Hansen can get her down multiple times, grapple with her, I'm not saying she's going to get the finish. She very well could on the ground, but she should be looking to strike the clinch, get in a grappling exchange, get the fight to the ground, stay on top, and get that ride time. If she does, she should have an easy path to victory. If she cannot get the fight to the ground, Piera Rodriguez is going to win it on the feet. She's got some heavy hands. She's got volume. She's much more comfortable on the feet than Kay Hansen is. You know, Kay Hansen has good movement, but she does get stuck a lot. And Piera Rodriguez is going to be going to be able to bite down on the mouthpiece, wing those punches. But I really think Kay Hansen is going to wrestle here. She's got the size advantage now that she's back down at 115. Doesn't have to worry about the bigger girl at 125. I think she's got this. So I'm going with the underdog Kay Hansen at plus, I believe she's back down to a plus 105 right now. If you like Rodriguez, you can get her at minus 115. Line's been moving up and down all over the place. Moving on, we got Anthony Fluffy Hernandez facing off against Josh Fremd. Hernandez coming in minus 180, probably pushing minus 190 right now. Fremd making his UFC debut, 9-2 coming off of the LFA. He is plus 155, probably plus 160, 165 at this point, depending on what book you're using. In this fight, you look at the tape on Josh Fremd. What I noticed personally, he's got some knockout power. Bruno Oliveira fought in the LFA. That was billed as, a big fight for the division. And he ended up knocking him out. What you notice about Josh Fremd is he's in love with the check left. The check left hook is like his bread and butter. Or, if he's going first, he's got a good lead left hook. And he really relies on it. He really relies on his left hand in his boxing and his stand-up, a lot. He rarely throws, he's got a good jab, and he'll stick that jab out there with the left. He goes to the body with the kicks. He's got good kicks, and he keeps you guessing because he uses every level. His low kicks to the body and also pumping that jab. And like I said, that lead left hook on the stand-up. But it's really odd because you don't really see him use his right hand a lot. There's not too many 1-2s. It's normally a jab, a kick combination, in and out. Wants to use his reach well on the feet. And a lot of those fights that I watched personally were fought at his pace. He likes to have a pretty methodical pace. When he touches you, dudes can drop. He's got some pretty heavy hands. But, you go back and look at some of the tape, he can get hit too. And when he's getting pressured, he moves straight back. And sometimes he can leave his chin up in the air, which is also something that you got to worry about with Fremd. Pretty decent grappling from what I saw. Nothing spectacular. There really wasn't any type of crazy grappling exchange where I would say, oh, wow, he, is, elite, where he got out of the submission. He was able to, maneuver, press into an armbar. Solid wrestler, solid grappling. Probably not going to get submitted when he's on top. I don't know how else to put it. Not putting too much stock into that. Because with Anthony Hernandez, I really do think he does have the grappling advantage. But what I really like about Anthony Hernandez in this fight is his pressure. He's a guy, you go back and look at his fights. You look at Marcus Perez. He ended up he took a kick to the body and got hurt in that fight. And that's what and then Marcus Perez got on top and he cinched up an anaconda choke on Hernandez. But if you look at that fight, those guys are going back and forth. Marcus Perez was always someone who's a pressure fighter. So it's Hernandez isn't afraid to stand in there and trade and get in and out, but also stay in there for extended combinations, which I really like, especially if you're fighting a guy like Fremd, who you're trying to get off his rhythm and pressure him a lot. And Anthony Hernandez is going to bring the fight to Josh Fremd. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Josh Fremd reacts to that. Because I don't think he's ever had... even when he lost to Gregory Rodriguez in the LFA Championship, Rodriguez doesn't... he's a big dude, but he's not one who's going to push a frantic pace on you. He's not going to make you work, cardiovascularly, if that's even a friggin' word. Your cardio is not going to be tested too much because he likes to be methodical too. And when he lands that shot like he did against Fremd, he's going to hurt you and he's going to put you out. And then when he smells blood in the water, he's going to pounce. So it's going to be a different kind of fight for Fremd, and I don't think he's going to be able to handle the pressure from Hernandez, especially if Hernandez can mix in that grappling. He's going to have the advantage in the grappling game, and I know I said Fremd's a decent grappler, nothing to write home about, but Hernandez, pretty high-level grappler. I don't see him getting a submission, but I just see this fight being the pressure from Hernandez on the feet, being too much for Fremd, mixing in the takedowns. At some point in the second or third round, Fremd's going to be kind of at a loss because that strategy that he has where he pokes with his left hand, throws that left hook, isn't working. And he's tired, and he's got to deal with the takedowns, and he's got to deal with Hernandez constantly in his face, throwing volume, throwing pressure. I just don't see him winning that fight. I got to go with Hernandez on this one. He's the favorite for a reason. A lot of people like Fremd because of the unknown, or they think that the line's juice for Hernandez. I personally don't. I think this is a good line. Like I said, Fremd is... I didn't see too much on the film with his stand-up where I'm like, wow, this dude's making reads and throwing combinations together. It's kind of just he knows what he likes. He knows what he can land, and he sticks to that. So that's why I'm going with Anthony Hernandez in that one. Moving on to the last fight on the early prelims, we got Oleinik versus Jared Vaandara. Oleinik was supposed to be fighting Ilir Latifi, which I was really looking forward to because I really liked Oleinik in that fight. But Latifi pulled out with an injury, so we get Jared Vaandara. So different kind of matchup for Oleinik. You got to break it down again from a style standpoint. You know exactly what you're going to get with Oleinik when he goes out there. Oleinik, he's going to be looking to strike the clinch. He's not afraid to duck his head and throw big bombs. He gets in trouble with strikers who have heavy hands and even strikers that can throw volume that are quick. You know, you saw what Dawkins was able to do to him. You know, Derek Lewis knocked him out in the second round. I will say Oleinik had some success in the first, but, you know, Oleinik, he really, at this point in his career, I mean, he's got no fear, man. As soon as the bell rings, he's going to be throwing heavy shots, and he's going to be looking to back you up against the cage. So Vaandara's got to know that going into it. He's taking the fight on short notice, but Vaandara, he's a striker. If you look, he's not really doing too much to take the fight to the ground. If it goes there, he's willing to oblige. I don't think he will against Oleinik if he's smart. If he's smart, he's going to just keep it standing, get out of those grappling exchanges up against the cage if he can. When Oleinik pulls guard, just immediately get out and tell him to stand back up because Oleinik's eventually going to gas. But with this fight, I'm not sure if Vaandara is going to deploy that strategy. Like against Arlovski, stand-up fight, Vaandara's got, you know, some good volume. He was billed as pretty heavy-handed with the knockouts and the ground and pound pressure coming into the UFC. Hasn't really shown it too much in his fights. I mean, you got Arlovski fight. That went to a decision, but again, Arlovski's the king of decisions at this point in his career. He's going to be sticking and moving. He's not going to stay in the pocket too long. He's not looking to get that chin tested because he's been folding in his old age. He's been pretty successful with it, I'll be honest with you. He's on a little bit of a tear right now outside of the blip from Tom Aspinall, but good for Andrei Arlovski, side note. Still kicking, still competing, still getting massive paychecks because he's tenured. Good for you, man. Anyway, Vaandara, like I said, he's going to look to try to keep it on the feet. He's a heavy dude. He's a big dude. Fight against Sergey Spivak. I mean, Spivak got him down to the ground, and Vaandara didn't have much at all for Spivak once he got down there. I mean, he just took an absolute beating with the ground and pound. Spivak was able to pretty much have his way with him and do whatever he wants when he's able to get that fight down to the ground and ended up winning via ground and pound. I mean, he really just crushed Jared Vaandara. Oleinik's a little bit different type of grappler, though. So it's like if the fight goes down to the ground, like equally as dangerous, but kind of like the silent assassin because he's very methodical in his movements. Like when he fought Sergey Spivak, a lot of people saying they weren't, you know, he's washed up because of that fight. Like Spivak looked great, which he did on the feet. Like he pieced Oleinik up. Oleinik got gassed. You know, it was a tough fight. It ended up being a decision, and Spivak got the win. But there's like little blips that you see where you still see the brilliance of Alexei Oleinik's grappling. Like when he got taken down by Spivak late in, like, he didn't get taken down. Well, actually, he did get taken down. No, he pulled guard. He pulled guard on Sergey Spivak. I believe it was in the second round. In the first round, very similar. The fight ended up on the ground, and Oleinik ended up mounted at the end, but there wasn't much time left. Same thing happened in the second, but you're able to see in that grappling exchange in the second where he started off he pulled guard, okay, and Spivak goes into his guard. He's on top. He's laying ground and pound. But you see Oleinik, like, he's very calm. Like, that's his world. Like, the guy's not called the boa constrictor for nothing. Like, he knows what he's doing, and that's where he's the most comfortable is when he is on the mat in some type of grappling exchange. So he slowly works his way and just inches his way, going through the progressions, getting just a little bit more ground on Spivak, and ends up reversing him with like 30 seconds left, and ends up mounted, grabs his choke, and then cranks it. You know, he gets out, gets into side control, and you can see him, he starts cranking on Spivak, and it looked pretty tight, man. If Oleinik just worked just a tad bit faster and got into that position with maybe like a minute left, I'm not so sure Spivak would be able to make it out. I think we'd be looking at a tap, but he started to choke with like 8 seconds left in the round, you know, and he was able to survive. And then the third round starts on the feet, and, you know, it's the jury's out on that one. I mean, you got a tired Oleinik. He's not going to be able to get the fight to the ground. Spivak's going to win the decision. That's what's going to happen. So with Vaandara, I think it's going to be more of the same thing. Like, I think Vaandara, if he's smart, he shouldn't feel comfortable in any type of position, even if he is on top, even if he's mounted Alexei Oleinik. I probably would not feel comfortable. I would stand up and say, let's fight on the feet, because I know you're going to tire out. You may land a few big shots on me. It's not going to put me out. I'm going to touch you up. That's what he should do. But I really do think there's going to be a point in time where Oleinik either can drag him to the ground or can do that, back him up against the cage and slowly slither his way to his back like he does and stick his hooks in. And Vaandara's going to feel a little bit too comfortable, especially if it hits the mat and he's on top or Oleinik pulls guard. A little bit too comfortable in that position, and slowly but surely he's going to find himself reversed, and then he's going to be in big, big trouble. So I'm going to go with Oleinik in this fight. He's a -105 underdog. Vaandara's -115. It's basically a pick-em in this because no one knows what the hell is going to happen. But if you're betting Alexei Oleinik, you're betting on the submission. He's not going to win a decision unless he has crazy, like he's on top the entire time, which I don't think is going to happen. I think Vaandara's going to win the striking exchanges on the feet. If he doesn't submit him, he's going to gas out, and Vaandara's going to look like a world beater in the later rounds. So I like Alexei Oleinik. -105. You might want to use the submission. I think that's going to be +250, because if he's going to get the job done, it's going to be by submission. Flat out. I just don't see him winning his decision, honestly. And a knockout, I mean, he's knocked people out before, and he's dropped dudes. He dropped Travis Brown, but at, 45, 47, however old he is, I don't think he's got that pop. So that concludes the review for the early prelims. Next up, the prelims in video 2. Be right back with you, signing off.